doing right now. Our thoughts, emotions, and actions increasingly live online. It will be a time when the net represents our souls, and our souls get an IP address. This is humanity in binary, the human race living in a digital space. As industry leaders, you're doing more than just documenting our web migration. You're driving it towards new horizons. Whatever your profession, developer, blogger, entrepreneur, you are part of a new field of digital anthropology, tracking and discovering the latest applications that let us represent our true selves online. In short, you're this century's digital Darwins, at the bleeding edge of our own e-revolution. Ironically, as our on and offline personas merge, I find that my virtual self can get closer to people more easily than my real self. It's one of the reasons I leapt into the digital fray with YouTube, Facebook, Flickr, and Twitter. Because, to be honest, it can be hard to connect with people when you're a queen. The position comes clouded in protocol, and people tend to succumb to a quiet deference in your presence, which can sometimes be frustrating. But online, people are not afraid to speak their minds. Social media has opened a window into my life and helped demystify who I am and what I do. This has also created a space where titles mean little, and everyone is free to say what they please. This direct and personal connection lets people reach out to me and also helps spread ideas and causes I'm passionate about. How else can anyone talk with 1 million people around the world all at once? Sure, I get dubbed a monarch on a mission, but I take it as a compliment, because I can't help but feel inspired by the potential I see. Yet, as our online and offline identities blur, we mustn't forget one very important question. Can the real-time web bring real-world change? Can it tackle some of the big challenges facing our global community? Poverty, disease, education? In the olden days, you'd have to take a question like that to the Oracle at Delphi. I took it to Twitter. A few weeks back, I asked my followers if they thought online activism could change the offline world. And I got tons of feedback, lots of great ideas. But I must admit I was surprised. The majority did not believe digital advocacy could translate into analog action. They couldn't see retweeting or joining Facebook groups as leading to volunteering or rallying. As one follower wrote, the problem was it would prove difficult to get their butts out of their computer chairs. It seems that when people think of the real-time web, they think of their online social networks. They think of finding old friends, sharing new photos, all in an instant. They also think that virtual movements lead to virtually nothing. But what about the post-election protests in Iran last June? For weeks, they dominated traditional media. Headlines were fueled in part by the enormous online explosion. Countless retweets, videos, up to the second news from the streets of Tehran. And then, Michael Jackson died. Suddenly, we were all at Twitter about the loss of a music legend, and Iran was no longer trending nor trendy. Which brings me back to my original question. Did MJ change the course of the Green Revolution? Now, of course, he did not. The situation was much more complex than that. But the question highlights an important point. In the online world, where causes come to you, you can pick and choose your favorite, no money down. The upside is exponential growth in awareness. The downside is, with little personal involvement, online activism becomes fleeting. That's why so many people don't yet believe social networks are really helping solve social problems. It's still just live streaming, not life changing. It's about where we are, not where our world needs to go. But I think we are at a tipping point. Change can happen because real-time is the new prime time. It's a source for news, a platform to collaborate, a mouthpiece to mobilize. From the Twitter sphere, I learned how one group raised money for a food bank in Canada by holding a social media auction. How an internet tax was scrapped in Mexico when it trended for 2 weeks on Twitter. How Avaz.org has clocked up 3.5 million members and over 14 million actions in 3 years, including petitions, rallies, and fundraising drives. In my part of the world, I was proud to see Jordanian company Whatwit, the Arab equivalent of Twitter, being used last January to aid victims of the war in Gaza. Directed by social media, Jordanians flocked to sort donations for women and children who had lost everything: food, clothes, homes. And one of the most extraordinary examples was when Typhoon Katsana crashed into the coast of the Philippines 3 months ago. Locals rallied volunteers in aid through Facebook, Multiply, and Plurk, using sites like Google Maps to pinpoint the worst-affected areas, literally saving lives. People countered the floodwaters with a flood of their own, with information, money, and action that surged through their online social networks.